Here we go.
We're live.
We're live. Welcome, everybody, to episode 159 of Live at the Hive, Digital Marketing from the Trenches. I'm your host, Dan Nadelko.
Matt Safanich.
I'm Sachita.
And Sashita, you're winning points with your background. What is it, Room Raider?
Yeah.
Have you heard of Room Raider?
No.
No, it's a Twitter account that rates people's rooms
Yep.
Oh,
after, for Zoom calls and things like that.
It looks like it looks really good. It's almost like it's like nicely staged. It has that kind of, if you wanted it to be your green screen effect, you could.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I heard that a lot.
Looking solid. All right. Well, welcome, everybody. Today, we are going to be talking about 5 lead generating tactics to fill out your webinar program. And part of that is we're all running webinars right now. Webinars are incredibly popular, as are live streams and online coaching and all sorts of other interactive things during the second phase of the lockdown here as we move into the holidays. So one of the things we wanted to touch on today were how you can create a sustainable and effective webinar program with the ability to generate high quality leads that you can then nurture. So we're going to be diving deep into that today.
Absolutely, yeah. And these steps aren't too technical either, so it's a really good place to kind of lead into and get started and gain some experience in, so that you can kind of nurture your automations and make them a little bit more complicated, so you get a little bit more higher quality leads.
Yeah, I think one of the important things to talk about in the world of online marketing, digital marketing, is the absolute importance of automation, moving data between platforms, and having those tight connections with deep understanding of your leads, both persona and profile and what they're doing. Yep. Otherwise, you're going to hurt your ability to scale. If you're having to manually export leads and move them over and do this and do that, you're going to run into a real hard time when you hit a certain kind of plateau. You're going to have a hard time jumping over it, and it's going to be very messy as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Alrighty,
so I think, look at all the bees filling in the chat. It's awesome to see. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. Hope everyone's enjoying their Friday. So before we kind of jump into our presentation, I think there's a few what's new that we wanted to go over.
I think there's really one.
Yep.
One what's new, and it's a big one.
That's probably why I'm thinking there's a few. It's one big one, but
it's one big one. So this is what's called a Google Core update. And we will have a resource for you as well to understand what a core update actually is. And these happen a few times a year, and they have far-reaching impacts into your ability to rank in search engines. Now, this one's causing some controversy because for many, many years, Google had a policy of not releasing core algorithm updates in the month of December for several reasons. Businesses were prepping for the holiday season, could be negatively impacted. This one's obviously causing a little bit more angst and anger out there in the world, mainly because are you on SEO Roundtable? Because there's some really good comments on
that.
I
am on SEO Roundtable. Yep. Do you want me to go straight to the comments section?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can see here. I think you got to go up a bit. There's like a series of. It's a really great. Yeah,
right here. Yep.
There's the comments there. Yeah. So one of the things here is people are very irate at Google right at the moment because obviously pandemic, BFCM just happened, moving into Christmas for many of these businesses. Wow, when you have that screen on, you're blowing your
I know.
Your massive gamer screen there.
There we go.
There you go. So some of the feedback from site owners is, why would you do this at this time, trying to take over the SERPs? Some people are dropping, some people are spiking. It's all over the place. The other thing to keep in mind is that this core algorithm update last time took about 3 weeks to roll out fully across Google. So if you're a marketer and you are looking at your traffic in Google Analytics or whatever analytics package you use, and you will see some variability. This is a great article because Barry Schwartz puts in a lot of the SEO sensor ranking tools. We tend to use SEMrush, which has a sensor, shows the volatility of SERPs in various geographies and the various varieties of Google search. And so you may see a lot of variability over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And if you wanted to, we also have an article directly from Google. This is a great resource there. And this one here is if you're interested in understanding what a Google Core update actually is and how it works, there's a bit of detail in Google's typical vague.
Yeah, you got to go looking for it too. I think the last time we covered one of these, a whole bunch of people were getting their like kind of delisted or such or de-archived from Google. I think it was like New York Times or something like that. They lost a whole bunch of rankings or something like that. So it's a bit of a win-lose. But yeah, I remember last time we went through one of the Google's articles and they had some really great, some are vague and some are pretty blatant at the changes that they've made. So it's definitely a good resource to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. So keep an eye on your traffic. And if you see variability, that's why. Hopefully it's on the plus side and not the downside.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right.
So that's about it for what's new this week. So let's start diving in here on our little case study that we that the bees prepared for everyone.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important, just in terms of introducing this, what we often see is the use of webinars. Everybody wants to do them now. But there's a process and a technique because webinars are very much a bottom of funnel experience. If someone's going to join your webinar for 45 minutes to an hour, even 20 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it is, they're taking time out to engage with you and with your brand or with your company or your offering, right? Yep. The thing is there are many techniques in terms of nurturing your leads to ensure it's really tough to go out there to a cold audience and engage with them, get them to register, and then get them to show up and then be engaged throughout your entire webinar. It's a very much a growth process. You have to go through this consistently, and that's going to be a major theme that we're going to be discussing and some tactics. And I know, Sashita, you've got some examples of ads. Just for those that may not know, Sashita is our traffic manager.
Yeah, and I deal with promoting all the webinars and optimizing those ads.
Yep. Spending money and getting positive return on advertising spend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure.
Absolutely. All right. So let's dive right in here.
Yep.
So who wants to go over the 5 kind of high level tactics? Just rattle them off.
Yeah. So there's really 5 tactics that we'll kind of be discussing throughout this entire presentation. And the 5 are, create a persona for your ideal buyer. We'll go in depth on, what information you should include, what it looks like. Second, we'll go into kind of creating webinar content that speaks to potential leads, right? Next, we'll be going over like how to promote your webinar. So Sashita will also be giving us some insights on how we built ads to promote the webinars and what sort of strategies she uses when she's using her tools. We'll also be developing kind of a lead score process, why it's important to create a lead score process, and how to get it to specific webinar leads. And then lastly, post-webinar lead nurturing, what to do after you've done your webinar. You're not just going to jump right over to the next one. You're going to be segmenting. You're going to be nurturing those leads. So there'll be a lot of stuff throughout this presentation that we'll touch upon.
Absolutely. And just a couple of things to note about webinars. Yes, there are tons of them right now, but we've held several with several hundred attendees, and people are looking for this type of content at this particular time. Many people are going into a holiday period, and they want to increase their knowledge, and they want to learn. And we'll get into some of the types of webinars that you could be holding. Strongly suggested that this is a very good way to engage with your leads, to grow your leads, and to build those relationships.
Absolutely, for sure. We'll go into the next slide here. This one, we're kind of just talking about, how a lot of times people are rushing to grab their leads for their webinars. A lot of the times, they push people straight into the sales pitch. They try and get that sale, but you really need to start building and nurturing this relationship before you go in for a sale or before you even go in for an ask, really.
Yep, absolutely. And this is really one of the, oops, start my watch party. Did I not? Oh, sorry. Okay. I was doing two things at once. Just like with everything in digital marketing, it's really important not to be streaky and to start and stop and start and stop and start and stop. Given the saturation of messaging coming out in the world today, and everything is saturated. Facebook is saturated. Instagram is saturated. Building your community is more important now than it's ever been. And reinforcing the concept of consistency, even if it's not perfect, consistency, your webinar may not be perfect. But aiming for perfection, done is better than perfect is the saying. And the more that you do webinars, and if you have if you can do a webinar a month, then please do that, because that consistency is going to pay off massive dividends in the future for you. And what we do often see are businesses, well, I did a webinar. Yay, I'm done. Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the beginning of the process. And that's the most important part of this is with webinars and with live streams and with anything else is consistency. Even if they're 20 or 15-minute webinars, that's fine. Webinars traditionally are tagged as like this hour-long thing.
They don't need to be.
They don't need to be. No, not at all.
No.
So yeah.
And I think too, like if you're stopping after your first webinar, either because you got quite a bit of leads or you're discouraged by the amount of leads you got, if you stop there, it's about 25% of the maximum potential that you could be getting from your leads. If you're only doing one, you're not, building that relationship. You're not getting in contact with people who've registered, watched, people who missed. Are you sending them VODs? We'll be going over that throughout the slides, but you're really missing out on about 75% of what potential your webinar can perform for you.
Well, and I think the other thing to note about this is it's extremely important to remember that leads are people. And whatever business you're in, professional services or SaaS software, there is a notion that this idea of lead gen is get me the leads and I'm going to pump them through and we're going to convert a few of them. When in fact, it's much more of a humanistic process that you should be taking to this concept of lead generation, which is community building and moving people through what may be a non-linear funnel, right? People will come, people will go. They may be interested one week. They may not be interested the next week. But using a churn and burn philosophy about lead generation and treating those individuals as if they aren't human beings that have pain points and are trying to solve a problem is going to lead to an ineffective program, because philosophically we've got to approach it from the notion that these are human beings over here. So our automations need to speak to people. I think the other thing I'll add before I ramble on too much is automations are not bad things. Automations are great things when done properly. Right? It's how you write your automations, and are you giving things context, or are you just a poorly planned automation is just I'm sending you an email every X days, and that's it. You want to use behavioral tracking and use behaviors that those individuals are doing to launch different flows in an automation that will go down a different path based on what that person wants.
Yeah, for sure. It takes a bit of time to definitely get it there, but once you put the time in, and you do a couple automations and you start learning about the behaviors of your leads, it'll work out tremendously. But let's just kind of take a step back here, and this is kind of a segue into our next point: is you want all these leads, but are you getting the right people to become your leads, right? And this is where we're talking about creating this profile, this persona of your ideal buyer or your ideal lead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we can speak to, I mean, Sushita, you've been involved with several persona developments, I think this week and last. I'm pretty sure you've been working on that. Yeah. How, Sushita, does a persona factor in when you're designing Facebook ads, for example?
Yeah, they really do play a very important factor, first and the most important one, because that's how you will, strategize your campaigns. That's how your campaigns will look, the images and the target audience. Everything depends on your buyer persona, and for that you need to have a really good understanding of it. And depending on that, you will strategize your campaigns. So, for example, if we are doing a webinar for women, so our campaigns should, and talking about the the creatives, they should talk to the women and address their pain points and try to talk to them, and that's how you grab their attention, and that's how they will be interested in clicking that ad and then registering for whatever webinar it is.
Absolutely. And that's, you make a great point there, is when we do the pain point development and the language development, and then we write our calls to action based on the solutions to the primary pain points that these individuals are having. So we've put together, and the second part of that is the persona allows us to write solution-based language. Instead of writing about us in this example, if we were running the ad, we actually want to solve the reader's problem and not promote our product or our brand, if that makes sense. Your product or brand should solve the problem of your user and highlight that pain point. That's the
uplifting
nuance.
Your leads, right? It's uplifting your leads, really, is what you're trying to do.
Well, we have stats to show the incredible difference it makes in the quality of leads that you generate, and the quality of the cost will be lower, because when you have that high conversion rate, because you've captured somebody's interest and they want to hear what you're giving them, right?
Absolutely.
Courtney's saying another great use of automations, qualifying leads, qualifying, nurturing, all sorts of fun stuff for sure.
Absolutely.
And Matei's throwing down some props.
Hey. Right on. So Sushita, why don't you run through some of these points on the right hand side here that we have, and kind of how you've utilized these within the ads?
Yeah, so definitely. So first of all, what I go through while developing or setting up a campaign is understanding the demographics for sure, and also sometimes testing out different campaigns depending on the demographic helps a lot. So yes, so focusing on the age group, and if it's a woman, men, or children, whatever. So we need to focus that, research a lot on the audience type, and accordingly plan your audiences.
Yeah. The other thing you can see there is we do a personality check. Now, you may be confused about how to start. If you haven't done persona development, the question might be, well, what do I do? Do I just guess? Well, no, there's a lot of places. So in this fictitious example, Amy has got an online course about how to crochet. Crochet, right?
Yep.
That's what we're doing here. Yeah. Now, Katie here is the ideal customer persona, fictitiously created. But here's a few ways that you can go about maybe you're just starting out. Okay, so way number one is, obviously, if you have existing customers and leads, survey them, collect that data, and try to get honest feedback from them. That's way number one. But let's say, hey, you know what? I'm just starting out my business and I don't have that information. Well, there's this really great website called Reddit that pretty much has a topic on everything in the universe, to be honest with you.
Yep.
You can research threads on Reddit. Oh, let's see here. Look at this. April throwing down some knowledge bombs here. It's important to know exactly who you were talking to before organizing your strategy. This way you'll be able to address all of their pain points. Your campaigns will be much more successful.
Yep. So this is, I'll just showcase this one as well. This is the Reddit page for crocheting, right? So we kind of go through, and it's people just kind of sharing their works, their love of crocheting, what they've been working on.
Yeah, and you can find, I mean, this is one of probably thousands of different subreddits on Reddit where you could find out about that. You can also find, I know for a fact with crocheting and sewing, because I've got aspirations to use my sewing machine in Serger someday, but I have to learn. You can find forums about learning how to crochet. You can find on Quora. If you're doing B2B, you can go look at Quora. You can look at LinkedIn, search social media. The other tool that you can use, which is fantastic, is a tool, and maybe you can pull this one up. This is a little random. Spark Toro from our friend Rand Fishkin. Now, this is a really cool tool. Spark Toro will identify your customers' biggest sources of influence and the hidden gems. It really does work really, really well. It's a very fascinating way to do audience development. You can do some free searches on there. There is a cost associated with it, but Rand is very flexible. It's just Rand and another fellow. They're keeping it lean, but this is a great way to do persona development without guessing, far too much. You definitely don't want to make it up. You want to go from some sources. And like I said, I actually really think Reddit and forums are a great place to see those conversations back and forth.
Yeah, you got to immerse yourselves in the community for sure. And you have to kind of listen to everything everyone's saying to gain, proper information about how to create your persona.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we use those platforms all the time whenever the team gets together for a huddle and creates these, because even then it takes a few people working on this, makes it a lot easier and a lot more accurate too, because you're getting more ideas and more opinions, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the personality profile is always very important, whether your audience is more introverted or extroverted, and what their motivations are. That's going to help you write that copy. And it's going to help you. It's going to help you approach communicating to those people on their level. And it sounds maybe a little bit cheesy, but using empathy in your copy to understand what's motivating. And again, this is your ideal buyer, right? This is the person that you would ideally want as a customer and a client of your business here.
Absolutely. Stacy has a really good comment here. A good customer persona can also help you pinpoint where your customers are and how they consume content. So you can not only address their pain points, but understand what channels you should use to reach them and ultimately attract them, nurturing them, and get the sale. For sure. Absolutely, Stace. Really good.
Nice one.
So you want to move on to the next one, how to kind of create this content for them?
Yeah, for sure. So you go through that process, and look, you don't have to be so fancy about it. You can just take a notebook, a pen and paper, and do some research for half an hour over a glass of wine on a Friday night or whatever, and start to map out that persona development. Or you could have a cocktail if you want to.
Yep.
So once we've got that, our ideal buyer persona, and you've got your product, now I think there's a very big notion in the world that, what's a webinar? There are tons of different types of webinar formats that you can select. I'll give you an example, right? One would be a tutorial webinar where you're literally going. So in Amy's case here on how to crochet, be a free 45-minute live webinar where she's going to walk you through how to knit a hat. And maybe if Amy's probably really good at crocheting, so she's going to go through and actually knit a hat in a 45-minute webinar. And I know for a fact that there are very skilled people who crochet who can do this.
Absolutely. Yep.
Right. Or you could do a top 10, the top 10 things a beginner needs to know about how to crochet effectively. Right. That's another one. Another format for a webinar is the interview. So maybe Amy is going to interview one of her peers in the industry, and that's going to be a back and forth interview style format. You can also have the panel. So you'd have 3 or 4 people. That's helpful because it doesn't necessarily put everything on one individual's plate to have to perform for that entire webinar, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the times too, if you're an established business and you haven't gotten into webinars yet, chances are you're already going to have content on your website, blog, or somewhere that you can already utilize for the topic of your webinar too. So, I mean, if you're strapped for time and resources, take a blog post and create a webinar series out of it. You know, maybe it's a 45-minute lesson, maybe it's a series, right? So,
well, definitely. I think one of the other things is do your research. Answer the Public is a great search engine for question-based searches that pulls from several. So you could easily develop the questions that people are searching for around your product, service, or topic. And if you tailor it to the most popular questions asked and then target that right intent audience, and Sushita, I think we'll be diving into some audience creation tools across the different platforms. You're going to see a massive difference in the performance of your lead acquisition, because now you're nailing everything, and the webinar format can be tailored specifically to that to your audience.
For sure, absolutely. So now Amy has created her persona. So she has her persona for Katie. Amy's honed into what types of topics her audience is most interested in. So in this case, it was how to crochet. So now Amy's going to plan how to promote this webinar and where to get it through. And Sushita, I'll let you kind of go through this slide for us here.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the success of a webinar, definitely we want to focus on how to bring more people. You want to have as many people register for the webinar as step one. So definitely we should be posting on our social media pages, your social media networks, certain groups that are related to crochet and knitwear and so on. And then also PPC. Definitely, I think PPC has a great way to collect those leads that will help you, register for the webinar. So I think there are two ways. First of all, sending your ads to a direct landing pages, and we will come to the examples of an ideal landing page in the next slides. And the second way is Facebook lead gen forms. I'm going to stress more on Facebook because it is the most cost-effective one, and also it helps you target your audience in a better way. Especially for, if you're talking about crochet, knitwear, so it does help you target, the right audience. And coming to Facebook forms, I think, we have talked about this before as well, but the main benefits is it directly captures those leads. The Facebook forms are all information is pre-filled by Facebook, so the leads don't have to type in everything, and we have all the information. And also they have, we can again direct them to the registration page if they want some additional information, they want to know more about the topic and the speakers and so on. So that's a great way to capture your leads. And secondly, if you want to target your direct your traffic to a landing page, yes, it does. It should address all of the, the topic of the webinar, like bullet points, give you motivation to, register for the webinar, because many a times it does happen that people do click on the ads because it interests them, but when they land on the landing page, they kind of get disappointed. So we want to keep that flow, and we want to encourage them to register for the webinar.
Absolutely. And a couple of other points to add to that, all great points, Sushita. On the Facebook side of things, it's nothing against Google, but Google will come in at a much higher auction than Facebook, especially recently. Facebook has been, there's been shifts in auctions, right? Like travel's reduced, but other channels and other verticals have increased. But by and large, Facebook is coming in at a 60% lower cost than Google's network. That's not to say Google doesn't have opportunities, but it's just a much more mature market.
Yep.
From the concept of social, we've talked a lot about this idea of jab, 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 right hook. That's Gary Vaynerchuk's We Use, See, Think, Do, Care. When you're promoting on social, and we're going to talk about this a little bit in the email marketing side of things, specificity wins. Okay, you want to throw down one nugget for that individual that is going to be that's going to catch their attention. We've got some examples of good ads we think catch attention. And give them that information. Don't just say, join my webinar next Wednesday at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
Like, why would I join the webinar? Why do I care about you? What are you offering me?
Yep.
And you can do that by little nuggets of information. So in Amy's case, it could be, a solution to the trickiest part about starting crocheting, right? How to do a pattern and just one little tip. And then you can learn more and do a deep dive with me on my webinar. And make content part of your promotional campaign. Don't just put the offer out there. Give, then you get the ask.
Absolutely.
You the ask. Yeah,
for sure. So let's look at one of these examples here. Now, the bees put in an example from.
I want to just feature Yvonne's comment there. Back to personas there. Depending on the avenue, you'll have a more diverse customer base, and that means creating more than one persona. That's an excellent point. You should have several personas, and you should also have your own brand persona. Imagining your business as a human being, what would be the motivations and everything else to round it out? That's a great point. Thanks.
Especially each campaign could have a different persona too, right? So as you develop more and more campaigns, that's how you're going to be getting more and more personas, right? Yeah. So as you build up, gradually builds. For sure. Good point. Alrighty. So like I said, the bees put in an example here for a webinar promotion. This one,
these aren't webinar. These aren't webinar.
No, sorry, not webinar promotions, but we're more looking at the copy here and the language that they're using. So Soshita, let's walk through some of the language, because I know you write up a lot of ad copy for our ads. So why don't we kind of go through this?
Yeah, for sure. So I think what this example highlights is the CTA, like guarantee your seats. So that entails scarcity, and that's how people, they don't want to miss out on the webinar or the information that they want. And definitely these kind of CTAs we have seen them performing, they have a lot of success as compared to other messaging and headlines.
Yeah, there's a couple of other things here too, is they're focusing on a specific game, right? The Bucks versus the Warriors, which is going to elicit passion from the fans of the Milwaukee Bucks, right? They're the fear of missing out, FOMO, is incredibly important to guarantee your seats. And they're not trying to overdo it. It's just nice and quick and punchy. And I'm going to say that this probably performed very well. This is a pre-COVID-19 ad, by the way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, it'd be a little bit different. Yeah, but right. I mean, the fear of missing out and directly, communicating to your lead, using pictures of people looking towards the person looking at the ad. That's really effective too. We also have this example here.
Okay.
It's a more personalized one, I think. And I'll zoom in on this one just so we can read it a little bit easier.
For sure.
There we go.
All right. So what's good about this ad is, one, it's a more organic looking image, right? It's clearly shot on, probably a mobile device in this individual's office, in her office. And that type of content, if you're struggling between stock photography and organic photography, 10 out of 10 times, if I was asked this question, I give the same answer, is like, use your own photography. It makes a huge difference. The other thing, if you can pull that back up, Matt, I love the use of the whiteboard because it's actually the CTA. And it is the call to action, and it's very simple. Takes very little creative effort, but it's very effective. And in here is playing on, and this is what I would call negative intent. It's playing on people's fears that they're paying too much tax, or they're not potentially doing everything, which I think for any business owner and anybody is like, do I know? I don't know. Tax code's like this thick, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and no jargon, keeping it very simple and to the point. And this one is for a webinar, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very welcoming, and even from the first point that you made of how personalized it is, a lot of the times when we're asked to like find photos or some stock images and stuff like that, sometimes my heart breaks because I'm like, let's use images of like your face, your business. Let's put
Mhm.
you out there so that, when people are interacting with you, it's what Sashida talked about beforehand. You're not misleading people. You're not, taking them down a different avenue. It's your face there from the beginning, and you're starting to build that relationship
Mhm.
right when someone sees your ad.
Yeah. And again, it's Facebook, right? So even though you're promoting on Facebook, doesn't mean that your content shouldn't look and feel organic.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing that businesses can do is take what they do in print and just plop it on Facebook. Doesn't work the same way. Let's see here. Courtney's got a comment. When creating content, images, copy, anything, I always ask, what can I add that no one else can? Your own photography is definitely one answer.
Absolutely.
Hear,
Yep.
hear.
Unique to you and you your own. So
All right, so let's get hustling. We got 6 minutes left.
We got holy jeez, this is wow.
I told you this is going to be a big one. Yeah,
this is a big one, but that's good. We have lots of good info here. So this next example, it's playing more so on the psychology of the target audience that we created beforehand, right? It's focusing on their pain points, what they need, but it's also giving them just a little bit of a sneak peek of that information that you're going to be showing them, right? And they use a great graphic here to kind of do so, right?
Yeah, for sure. This really is a great example of literal pain points. And there's in the copy, they're talking about how this can be solved, and it really is reaching well. Nicely done. The use of some fairly straightforward vector art. So there are situations where if you can tell your story and use that image to tell the story, you're going to have an effective messaging to your audience.
For sure.
Let's keep
going.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. So this one is the one that I like the most, the landing page examples. Sashida, let's kind of go through this because you and I in the past have worked together on landing pages quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I like the way this landing page, it lists down what the host is going to cover in the webinar, and why you should attend it, and it also has like a small video which will just give you like like a trailer to the webinar.
Yeah, there's a bunch of really good elements here, and I think it's also important to understand that when you're designing a landing page, and I know that there's different design aesthetics and things like that, but quite often what people might call an ugly landing page is intentionally so because it's effective for a specific audience, right? Some of the key points here, watch the past live chats, so you're giving that sneak peek into what somebody can expect, and you're not gating the content. Really like the why should I attend? Again, writing for that person that's reading it, not just talking about you is a really important point in this. And making it very clear, the use of color there makes your eyes go directly to the registration form.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. One thing that this landing page does really well is leading the eye. Going through the content and leading the readers through where to read first and kind of where to go, and having the arrow from the lead form to the video. I mean, this looks like there's a lot going on at this landing page, but the way that they kind of lay it out, it doesn't make it seem too kind of information overload.
That arrow was actually annotated after by where I pulled it off as a point.
Never mind.
That this was a key point. It's all good. It's all good. So Yvonne's got a comment here. Your own photography, just to jump back a bit, is something so much more appealing. If I'm going to join your webinar, then I want to get to know you. It helps put a face to the name and builds that connection. Absolutely. And that's something that just stock photography doesn't convey well.
No, and people can usually tell. You have to be very picky with your stock, but that's another topic for a different day. Anyways, moving along. Facebook forums examples. So this is what we were talking about earlier with the Facebook forums. And Sashida, you're pretty familiar with these.
Yeah, for sure. Facebook forms, they autofill your information. They're a great way to capture your leads. So unlike, when you drive your ads to the landing page, sometimes the users get lost in the information and they forget actually registering for the event. So Facebook forms is a great way to kind of give more in-depth information about the webinar and also capture those leads. Another thing I want to talk about the question fields here. So, I recommend keeping these questions direct and listing just the important ones, because you don't want to be having several question fields where people have to go and fill up all of these, and it's not very, because some of them are new users. They don't even know you as well to share that kind of information with you in the first go.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So the analogy that I have on that, especially at the top of the funnel, this may be one of the, not the first time. Hopefully, you've been strategically building your audiences over time so that you've got brand recognition. But the analogy I would use is if usually happens in furniture stores, but it can happen in like stereo stores. The salesperson walks up to you and kind of corners you and asks you 5,000 questions, and you just want to look around and you just want to learn. And if they're just asking too much, you're just going to walk away. That's the literal online equivalent of that in real life. So don't be afraid to lower the or reduce the friction. Get the minimal amounts of data. You don't even need their name at this point. You could just do email. It's the fastest path to getting them into your marketing automation platform or your CRM to start that iterative nurturing process. And you can do what's called progressive profiling, right? Asking a couple of small questions here and there to get you to build up that profile over time. Oh,
Absolutely.
Let's see. We've got a comment here. Oh, exactly. We usually recommend using photos of the person hosting the webinar. That way it crafts a relationship before the event. People feel like they know you a little bit already. We are going to touch on that. Oh my God, it's 5 o'clock.
I know. And we still we got quite a bit to cover here.
I think we might have to. We might have to
do part 2. We can do part 2. That's okay.
I mean, we could build it out and do a part 2. I don't want to leave everybody hanging here.
Yeah.
We could talk for an hour about just developing lead scores.
I know. That's why.
So I'm going to just very briefly do a super fast summary of developing a lead score strategy. Is in MailChimp, in HubSpot, in ActiveCampaign, Pardot, Marketo. It's all very similar. Using lead scores to track behaviors is an incredibly effective way of being able to create an advanced segment. Again, this is behavioral, right? And so are they visiting the site? What content have they visited? What kind of content in the email cadences that you've got? You should have several cadences to drive people down different paths. That may be, in Amy's case, for example, it may be, your course, like a 5-step email course to getting started with crocheting. But then there may be somebody that's intermediate, wants a little bit more, right? Maybe it's problem-based, how to crochet a toque in a certain style, right? Like it's very specific. And then what you want to do is you want to marry up all that information. And when that activity is being tracked, you assign the lead scores. And then you can do what's on the right-hand side there, which is, are they ready for a sale? Are they going to try another product? Upsell, downsell? Should I get them further engaged and do micro surveys for them? That's all part of developing that lead score process specific to your webinar leads.
And are they not a good fit? I think that's a really important one too, because a lot of people want to hold on to those leads and they're kind of like, they don't want to let them go. And if that person just isn't a good fit, they're not a good fit. Let's focus on the people that are, the people that are still going through the funnel, the people that are getting engaged, and focus on those areas, right? One
of the worst things that anybody can do in lead gen is just try to get the list bigger and bigger and bigger. We see it a lot, and that's where you actually get very poor conversion rates, very poor engagement rates. And it's simply not worth it. If someone's never opened an email from you, why are they in your database?
Yeah, pretty
let
much.
them go, for the love.
You're probably in the spam. They probably put you in the spam anyways.
Exactly. And purging and segmenting your leads lists is important. It's important. It also saves you money. And if you're sending to this big list, right, just for the sake of sending to a big list, you're actually getting incorrect data, right? Because if you've got 60% of your leads that haven't opened an email or interacted in an entire year, your conversion rates are actually probably higher with your active audience than with the zombie audience that really isn't there. So
absolutely. Yeah.
okay,
And if there's one thing that we can also, I mean, do you want to keep going? Because the next one we have here is
this is a monster.
Yeah. So that's why I'm kind of thinking could be one on its own, but
it is. But the point of this, and I'll just kind of talk about the point of this. Now, this is very nicely stylized by Matei. My version's a little bit more meat and potatoes and bare, but the whole point of these sequences here is to create engagement for your webinar. And you can see it at the point 1 and 2 and then 3. When you're creating an email cadence for promoting a webinar, a 3-stage sequence works really, really well. Have specific benefits. Give them a tip that will create that engagement based on all of the other research. Don't just say, hey, did you register? Hey, did you register? Hey, did you register? What you want to do is you want to, if we use Amy's example, right? You know, join with the added benefit here. I'm going to teach you how to get started being really great at crocheting. Oh, sorry, not the greatest copy, but I'm doing this on the fly, so please be kind. And then in the second benefit, it could be, you know, the top 10. I'm going to tell you, it could be just like a little list, the top 10 mistakes or the top 5 mistakes that people new to crocheting make and how to reduce that frustration. Step number 3 could be, then join me and I'm going to give you some free patterns or something, right?
Yep. Continuing
To segment and those offers as you flow down that kind of waterfall is going to increase your the interest in the webinar and the attendance of the webinar. One of the biggest problems with webinars when you're promoting too early and too infrequently, if someone registers for a webinar on November 1st and your webinar is on November 30th, for example, and you don't communicate for 4 weeks in there, I almost guarantee you that they will not show up.
Yep.
Right. And it also is not unusual for 50%. I mean, we typically get 80, 90%. Sometimes we've gotten 50%, depends. But 50% is, as a ballpark, is very typical for webinar attendees, which is why one of the things that we talk about in that cadence at the very bottom there is always have your replay ready, because the replay is an evergreen moment for you to continue to, you know, don't just do the live one and then shut it down. That's not a great idea. Okay.
Yep.
Then post webinar lead nurturing. You'd want to follow up with an additional cadence and follow up with those attendees, survey them, get an idea and during your webinar, you want to talk to them about how to, like, ask your audience very simply, very directly, ask your audience what they think and put those polls and those surveys up. You get real good feedback. Even if it's negative feedback, it's going to be useful.
Yep. And then create evergreen content. Like a great example is what we do at Live of the Hive. You know, the creative team, they do an excellent job in taking the content that they say on the live and making it into nice infographics that you can share on social, some quick videos that people can rewatch for highlights.
Yep.
You really get a huge amount of content from
one webinar can provide you with well over 100 pieces of unique content you can refactor very easily.
Yep.
Oh boy.
We're almost.
we were a little bit too ambitious here.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay, let's just do a quick summary so we can let all the fine people go on their Friday afternoon here. Some of the keys to success is, like, you know, they do this on ESPN. Like, what was the turning point? What were the keys to the game? The game winner. Consistent. Obviously, developing that persona in a very realistic way. Writing for your audience. On Facebook ads, build your custom audience, your audiences and your custom audiences. This is critical. And we see so many people not even aware that this notion of audiences exists on Facebook when it is the most powerful feature of Facebook ads. So if you've run ads in the past and we hear this, like, Facebook ads don't work, come on now. They work. Yeah, they really do work. We've got clients that sell $2,000, $3,000 USD products on Facebook and on the regular.
Yep.
Audience development, custom audience development, and lookalike audience development is critical to the health of your entire Facebook account. I'm just going to jump back here. Consistently segmenting your email contacts, follow-ups for all the live attendees, creating automations that are humanistic in nature and not just robotic, right? Like you're writing an email to an individual.
Yep, we talked about that last week too, adding personalization, maybe even going, hey, I know this is an automated email, but I still really care about what you thought of the webinar. I'd love to hear from you personally. Let's get in contact, something like that.
Yep. And lastly, not all webinar platforms are no download platforms, but what we found is a no download platform, web-based. So Webinar Jam, Webinar Ninja, there's several different varieties that you could pick from. Pick from, is going to be far more effective for your leads, no matter what it is. Zoom, GoToWebinar, Cisco. With a download, you're going to encounter audience people that they don't have it installed necessarily, or they need an update, or it's not working on their mobile device, or they don't have that. You want to lower that barrier and make it as easy as possible. And we're seeing a huge number of people on iPhones, Android devices, iPads. They're not using their desktop as much as they were mobile devices. One last point, and I know I'm rambling off a bit here, especially if you're dealing in professional services with people that work at very large companies that have restrictive IT rules. They will be watching on their mobile device, typically if they're working or in the office, and some of them can't install some of those pieces of software. So you don't want to miss out on that.
Yeah, accessibility is a huge thing for sure.
All right.
We did it. We tried to do it under an hour. We did it 10 minutes under, 9 minutes under, but
you know what? We're going to do a webinar.
Stuff.
We can do a webinar about webinars. Very meta.
Webinar reception, for sure.
That's right.
For sure.
Let's do it. All right, everybody. That's a wrap for episode 159 of Live at the Hive, Digital Marketing from the Trenches. Anything exciting going on with either of you this weekend?
No. Finals weeks for me, so busy. Yeah. But Sashita, what about you guys doing anything?
No, just watching the snow from having a hot cup of coffee. Yeah, that's it.
Get all bundled up, get out there and get into it, Sashita. That's the only way to survive a Canadian winter. You gotta go build a snowman or something. Hey, you gotta hit it head on. Yeah. Otherwise in March, you'll be like going crazy.
April saying yes, a Honeypot webinar.
Yes, many of them. Mm-hmm. Many coming. I'm Christmas treeing this weekend. I ordered my Clark Griswold 12-foot tree, so I got to go pick it up tomorrow.
Yeah, gotta post some pictures on Instagram, some stories of you guys setting it up for sure.
Oh yeah. We will. It's it takes quite a bit of effort, but we'll get her done. So awesome. All right, everyone. Well, have a great weekend. Thanks for sticking around. This was a very long one. And we appreciate it. We hope you got something, some valuable information out of this week's live. So take care.
See you then. Bye-bye.